So hello everyone, my name is Prabjot and I would like to welcome you to SafetyDriven's webinar, Building Your Safety Program. I have been with SafetyDriven for the past year after graduating from BCID's Occupational Health and Safety Program. I have previously worked in the transportation industry and I'm currently helping companies looking to develop their safety resources. Joining me today is Darshan Gill. Darshan is also graduated from BCID's Occupational Health and Safety Program in 2016. He has experience in several industries, including freight, trucking, and mobile crane. Darshan's background has helped him set up effective safety programs in organizations of all sizes. We will be with you the entire time, guiding you through the webinar, making sure you get to hear and learn about a relevant topic that is near and dear to us here at SafetyDriven, all while connecting that to the transportation industry.
All right, so on your screen now, you'll see our agenda for the next hour. We'll quickly cover a few housekeeping items, then you'll learn a bit more about SafetyDriven. And then we're on to the main event, which is really just talking about, we'll explain a bit about how SafetyDriven can help you improve your existing program or create a new one. And we'll answer a lot of the common questions and concerns we often get from the transportation and moving and storage industries along the way. While we're doing that, we'll guide you to some free online resources and help you get started on your own safety program right after this presentation as well. And lastly, we will offer a live Q&A session. So ask your questions. Don't worry if you want to keep your questions anonymous, you'll have full control over that. But other than that, that's our topics for today. And I'm excited. I think we'll have a really fun and meaningful session today.
Okay, Darshan, it looks like everyone is tuned in okay. But if you're experiencing any technical difficulties during the presentation, contact events@safetydriven.ca. We have people standing by to help you guys. We have already muted your audio for the presentation and turned off your videos. So don't be concerned if that isn't working. As you may have already noticed in your chat box, we would love for you to share your experience on the webinar today. Use the hashtags #SDWebinar, #SafetyProgram. You will find these hashtags at the bottom of the slides throughout the presentation as a reminder in case you forget. Tag us on your social media using whatever your preferred way is. It can be Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. Tag us using one of the handles noted here. Before we jump into the main event, a bit about SafetyDriven. SafetyDriven, Trucking Safety Council of British Columbia, is an industry-led organization dedicated to improving occupational health and safety in trucking and related industries, such as transportation, supply chain, logistics, and waste management. Our main goal is to improve safety operations and reduce injuries and fatality rates. We also have a key focus on expanding our outreach engagements with all aspects of industries. One of the ways we look to do is through events and resources like our webinar, intended to bring you valuable, relevant, and timely information and tools that you can put into practice. At SafetyDriven, we are proud of being approachable, our ability to make safety accessible. We strive to do this by offering a wide range of programs, services, and tools that are tailored to the needs of the industry. Some of our key programs and services include a team of occupational health and safety professionals like us, who will work with you every step of the way to help build and refine your safety program. A truckload of resources that you can download for free at safetydriven.ca on a variety of topics for managers, supervisors, safety reps, workers, drivers, and owner-operators. We also have safety training courses available. And as a certifying partner of WorkSafe BC's Certificate of Recognition incentive program, we administer core for trucking and related industries. All right, let's get into the reason why we are all here.
Okay, so before we get going, many of you have likely heard of SafetyDriven due to CORE. So there's a poll that should be popping up in your screen. CORE is a standard that a lot of companies want to meet, and it's most often what we're helping companies work towards. So on that poll on your screen, go ahead and just click yes or no. Are you interested in having a CORE certified program? As we're going through, as your answers are coming in, I'll just say that companies usually do want CORE in order to show that they have a health and safety program that meets an established standard. They want CORE in order to bid on a job, or they're interested in getting a discount on their premiums. So just click yes or no on that poll, and we should be able to get those results up there on our screen as well. All right, and we've got our results back. Okay, cool. It looks like we've got about 75% of you that are here are interested in having a core certified program, and about 5% of you aren't. That's actually pretty in line with what we typically see. Every company is always interested in having a functional health and safety program, but not every company that we work with is interested in getting core. And that's perfectly fine. So we'll talk a bit more about that later on in this presentation as well. All right, so based on those results, for those of us that are interested in getting core, there's a couple of things that we need to keep in mind as SafetyDriven helps you get there. So we always need to start with a health and safety program that meets core standards. Why don't we start with the basics and figure out what even is occupational health and safety, and we'll talk a little bit about what is a health and safety program. So as far as what occupational health and safety is, or you may commonly know it as OHS, it deals with workplace safety. The main focus of occupational health and safety is going to be the prevention of worker injury and illness. And our main focus is the worker itself and keeping them safe. OHS, or Health and Safety, is regulated provincially by WorkSafe BC or federally by Employment and Social Development Canada. I'll talk about the difference between the two a little bit later on in this presentation as well. And as most of us here are from the trucking industry or maybe familiar with the trucking industry, occupational health and safety is not the same thing as National Safety Code. So a bit about National Safety Code. Many of you, as I mentioned, are likely familiar with it. National Safety Code really just focuses on driving safety. It focuses on safety of the truck, the driver, and everything that they do while they're in motion. This can definitely play a part in your health and safety program, and there may even be some overlaps, but it isn't the same thing as occupational health and safety. One of the biggest things, the biggest differences that we see is that with National Safety Code, it's unlike occupational health and safety, the rules and the regulator that enforces the rules is going to be CVSE, who I'm sure most trucking companies are familiar with, or Commercial Vehicle Safety and Enforcement. For our federally regulated or companies that go down to the States, the National Safety Code aspect or the regulator for that may be their local Department of Transportation as well. All right, so if we're talking about health and safety, we're talking about worker health and safety. Let's start by talking about what a health and safety program actually is. A health and safety program is a set of policies and procedures that are developed in order to protect workers by reducing the risks that they face while they're performing their work. Programs generally have several different modules or elements in it, which cover items which range from topics such as workplace inspections, performing hazard identification, and other topics that we may be familiar with, such as incident investigation or even emergency preparedness. The policies that your program will have, they typically outline management's commitment and employee involvement. So the way that they do that is by including responsibilities that may cover the employer, responsibilities for supervisors and workers for each and every single one of those modules. Every module that we have will also have written instructions in your program, written instructions which require workers, which workers will be required in order to follow safely. A successful program really ensures that workers receive the instruction and training they need based on the procedures that you've developed in your program. And in addition to this, a formal health and safety program will keep records of inspection reports, of incidents, of relevant statistics, and any other records that the regulator may be required to see. The program itself should be developed specifically for your company's operations. So your health and safety program is going to be based on the size and complexity of your company, because the bigger your company, the more complex it is, the bigger your program will end up being, the more complex your program may need to be as well.
To support the development of an occupational health and safety program, we have got a number of resources available for free on our website. These are just some examples of what you can download. Examples are Joint Health and Safety Committee minutes, risk assessments, Joint Health and Safety Committee rules of procedures. It isn't good enough to just have a great safety program that sits on a shelf. In order to achieve core or meet regulatory requirements, you will have to actively participate or manage the health and safety program as well. A safety management system will ensure that the various parts of the health and safety programs are all functioning together. A successful health and safety management system will blend your health and safety program into your business processes. An effective management system not only develops all the policy and procedures necessarily, but it will demonstrate to workers that senior management is committed and actively involved in workplace health and safety. It will also set goals, provide resources, and support to the implementation of the procedures. It will ensure that there is ongoing communication with workers on health and safety topics. Lastly, management of health and safety program will involve evaluating to see how well the organization is doing when it comes to meeting its goals and identifying areas where it can improve. The goal of the health and safety management system should be to continually improve the health and safety in the workplace and of the workers.
All right, so now that we've introduced the basics and everybody here kind of has a better understanding of what specifically a health and safety program is, you'll see another poll pop up on your screen there. So would you say that based on what we've introduced, what we've talked about, do you have a health and safety program for your company? So just go ahead and click yes or no on that poll. Should be fairly quick here and should be ready to go in a couple of seconds. Excellent. So our results are in. We've got 18 people that say they do have a health and safety program, but there are some probably that don't have a health and safety program as well.
So Darshan, it looks like there are some companies that do not have health and safety programs. What if I'm a company owner and I don't have a safety program? Is that something SafetyDriven can help me with?
That definitely is. I mean, that's a core part of one of our main functions of what we do. So at SafetyDriven, we have a dedicated team of safety professionals that are going to help you in developing your very own health and safety program. And because we understand that building a program can be a lot of work, and sometimes people just don't know where to start with it. So what SafetyDriven does is we'll help you put your program together one step at a time. And unlike some of the other services or other services you may come across out there, we'll work with you to actually help you build a program that's customized to your organization instead of just writing one and then handing it to you.
That sounds great, but I have never put a program together myself. What if I don't know that much about health and safety, Darshan?
Well, we know that not everyone's an expert in health and safety. I mean, that's why we're here, right? So most of the people that we work with don't actually have a lot of previous education or health and safety experience, and that's never been a problem for us. We really believe that safety should be accessible to everybody, and all of our guidance and development process, it's designed to be easy for whether it's yourself or your workers, both of you to understand. The way that we do that is we start by breaking the program down into individual pieces, and we'll focus on developing just one piece at a time. As we help you build your program, we will start by ensuring that you understand the basic concepts of what we're working on for each module. Then we'll work together to put together some documentation that'll work for your workplace. And if that means that we have to take a bit longer to explain some stuff you've never done before, that's never a problem for us.
I think I have some old safety documents that we had developed, and I know some of them are still being used today. What if I already have some existing policies, Darshan?
Well, if you have some existing policies, that's not a problem. If they've been working well for you, we would want you to keep those. We'll review any existing documentation that you may have, and we may need to add in some stuff that may be missing in order to meet core or a regulatory requirement. That's not a problem, but what we'll do is we'll incorporate what you have existing into your new program. Similar to that, a lot of employers have staff that are like senior staff, very experienced, and they know procedures quite well. They know how to do their job well, but they don't have anything in writing or any documentation for that. That's actually quite common, and more common that we find that there's somebody that knows a procedure well, but there's no documentation. What we'll do in those types of scenarios is we'll actually work with you to document any informal procedures in order to reduce the need for major changes to how work is being done. If something's working for you, we really believe in not changing it.
That sounds like it might work for me. What specific information would you need to know about my company to get started?
Well, as far as information that we would need from a potential employer that wants to work with us, the very first thing that we'll start with is going to be employer size, because as I've mentioned earlier, the complexity and size of your program is going to depend on how many workers you have. So as far as employer size goes, we can help any size company from a single owner operator, small and medium employers that may be anywhere from 4 to 19. And then anybody that's a large employer with over 20 employees. They may have multiple locations, for example. They may have different business operations, but we do have specific documentation that will be used based on the size of your company. The next thing that we need to know is whether your operations stay within BC or if they take you to the other provinces or the US. As I've mentioned earlier, there's a difference between provincially regulated companies and federally regulated companies. If you stay within BC, if all of your operations stay within the province, you're going to be provincially regulated by WorkSafe BC. And those will be the rules and regulations that we follow is going to be the ones that WorkSafe BC has established. If you leave the province, say for example, part of your operations take you over to the Alberta, or you're going across Canada, or even down into the US, your company then becomes federally regulated. And what we'll do in those situations is we'll have to make sure that our health and safety program meets federal regulations. And lastly, we just need to know about what kind of work it is specifically that you do. We have different advisors that have different areas of expertise and have experience helping a variety of companies. So in order to determine how we can best help you, we need to get a bit more detail about what a company's specific operations are.
Mhm.
All right, well, on that topic, I think this is actually a good time to check in with our audience and learn a bit more about them. So you will see a poll on your screen again. Tell us how many staff you have. I'd mentioned the owner-operator size, the small size, and the large size. So click on one of those three and we'll get a better idea of who's in attendance today, because depending on your employee count, you may need a more complex program. Typically, for example, if you're in that 0 to 3 or that owner-operator size, your program may just need to be a few dozen pages long with nothing but the basics. But if you're at that 20 plus, you may have a couple hundred employees, for example. That may be a much larger program, a longer one that has more modules and maybe more in depth. So go ahead and click on one of those three choices. All right, our results are in. It looks like we've got, as expected, we've got a couple that would be in that owner-operator size. A fair number, so about 10% in that owner-operator size, 24% of people that are in attendance are in that small size, but even that can vary because it's quite a broad range from 4 to 19.
Mm-hmm.
And lastly, in that 20 plus, that large employer category, it looks like almost 2/3, 67% of attendees are here, are that large employer size.
It looks like our attendees are all from owner-operators, small sizes to large companies. Darshan, now can you give me a bit more detail about SafetyDriven, how SafetyDriven develops a program? I understand you can help me, but what does the process look like?
Well, from a broad overview, what we'll do is we'll schedule weekly or meetings every 2 weeks, one-on-one meetings with you, with someone that the company has chosen to lead the development of the program. Now, that may just be one person, or it may be a small team of people, but we really need the company to ensure that they have somebody that's championing this program and has that knowledge within their organization. And as I mentioned, we really are only going to focus on one thing at a time. What we do is we break that program into individual modules, and you'll see what those individual modules are on the following slide. But we start with management commitment and just work through building one module of the program, focusing on just one module of the program at a time until it's all put together. And then the last steps that we'll do is we'll focus on how to evaluate and manage the program that we've just built. In our experience, I know as we're talking about company size, most large companies, it takes approximately 12 to 14 months of regular meetings with us in order to fully develop and implement this program. With smaller employers, which we had a fair number of in attendance today, our smaller employers are generally quicker, and due to the smaller size, the lesser complexity at times, they can usually complete this program development process in about 3 to 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And as I'd mentioned, there is a specific roadmap. So there is a specific order that we typically like to develop this program in. We start with management commitment and work our way through, as you can see, all of the steps here for large employers, all the way through to the very last step, which is refining and evaluating your program. This is the overall process for how your program would come together. And we build it all the way through to the very end. You'll see a couple of last steps there, which are involving core and things like that. We'll talk about that a little bit later on in this presentation as well.
Darshan, does this seem a bit complicated? I understand you can help me put together an entire program, but what does the process look like for each of those smaller pieces?
Well, for each of those smaller pieces, we believe that it's important to actually take the time to teach someone how to build their program and teach someone what's in their program themselves instead of just doing all the work for you. So for each one of those smaller pieces, we start off by introducing any sort of background, regulation, any underlying concepts that you may need to know in order to understand any policies and procedures. Once you understand that, then we'll introduce any relevant policies, any relevant procedures for that module. At that point, what we'll do is instead of just handing the policy and procedure to you, we'll actually sit down and review the entire document with you in order to ensure it's clear what the company is stating it will do and what procedures it will follow. We really emphasize to companies that if you're putting something in writing saying this is what we're going to be doing, these are the procedures we're going to be following, it is now the company's responsibility to actually follow those. And during this time, as we go through the policy, as we go through the procedures, we'll also explain any regulatory or core requirements and how those are being met through your policy and how you would go about meeting them. So throughout that development process, though, what we do is we make sure that the program actually suits and matches up with your operations. I've often seen that there's companies that have programs that just don't line up with what they're doing, or the program says they're doing one thing and then what their company operations are completely different. We really work with you in order to make sure that this program matches up well with what it is that you're actually doing with the work that workers are performing. In addition to this, we'll try to provide as much in-house training as possible. So for example, if we're doing Joint Health and Safety Committee training, which is a training service that we have available, we'll train your workers, we'll train your committee members as part of the process instead of requiring you to complete training on your own. Now, that is obviously going to be limited to the training that we can offer. We'll talk a bit more about that a little bit later on as well. Once the policies and procedures that we've developed have been put in place and the workers have been trained, we'll focus on actually implementing the procedures that have been established. As far as implementation goes, implementation is always going to be the responsibility of the company. However, SafetyDriven will provide advice and feedback on implementation. This may include performing certain activities, such as completing inspections, documenting hazards, training and instructing workers. That's all a part of implementation. So let's take workplace examples. As you can see on that slide there, that's kind of typically step 3 of how we would develop a program. We start by, as far as workplace inspections go, we'll start by explaining the basic concept. So what is an inspection? What types of inspections you're required to do by regulation? How to actually do those inspections, and then other regulatory requirements such as inspection frequency. And then what we'll do is we'll develop policies and procedures with you that are going to be appropriate to the operations of your company. So we'll look at what your operations are, and then based on that, we'll determine exactly what inspections you're going to be required to do and how often. And then next, what we'll do is we'll provide the training to workers, in particular, for example, our Joint Health and Safety Committee members. We'll provide inspection training to ensure that anybody who has to perform workplace inspections actually understands how it is that they should be doing them. And lastly, after training, as I'd mentioned, we'll provide advice on how to best implement an inspection program in your workplace.
Darshan, that sounds like a lot of stuff a company gets, especially with how long this may take. What are the costs associated with this? I'm sure many people in the attendance are wondering too.
Well, Prab, as far as costs go, before I get into that, let's get a better idea of what kind of work that the members in the audience are actually doing. So on your screen, you've got 3 options there, which the following best describes your operations. Are you in general trucking? Are you in moving and storage? Or is your main operation some other function? Are you a warehousing company, a dump truck company, waste disposal, anything of the sort like that? We've got 3 options. We'll just wait for the responses to come in. Of course, the other is just going to be a selection. There's no real text to that. It's just option A, option B, or option C, depending on what best fits there. All right, we've got our poll results are back in. So we've got about 60% of people that are attending responded that they are in general trucking. 5% responded that they're in moving and storage, and about 35% responded that they're in a different industry outside of that. Well, for everybody that's answered this poll, the reason why I ask is because WorkSafe BC actually assigns every company 1 or more CUs or classification units, which are basically just different categories that WorkSafe puts you in based on the industry and the type of work that you do. Other companies with similar work are all going to be grouped into those same categories, and that is a CU. Now, if you're in general trucking or you're in moving and storage, as you see on the screen there, you've actually already paid for a lot of our services. Remember, we're talking about cost here. A lot of our services have actually been paid for because in these 2 CUs, when you pay your WorkSafe BC premium, what WorkSafe does is they take a small amount of money that anybody in these industries pays and sets it aside, sets a small amount of that aside for SafetyDriven's operating budget. For this reason, a lot of the services that we provide, Prab, are actually going to be free. There's no time limit on that for how long we work with you, and there's very little limits of what we can do because you've actually already paid for this. Now, For some of us that responded that the CUs are not general trucking or not moving in storage. So if you're in that other category, that's perfectly fine. We can actually still help you. It's just in those situations, we may have to charge a small fee for our services. But keep in mind, a lot of our services are still provided at cost. So we try our best to keep them affordable. And once we get all of your company information, we can actually let you know ahead of time how much it may cost you to work with us. In addition to this, in order to keep costs down, as I mentioned, we do try to do as much in-house training as possible. So we can train your joint health and safety committee members, we can provide access to some online courses, and we're actually continually working to increase the training options that we can provide free of charge. One last thing to remember as far as this goes is that there are always going to be some costs that are going to be the employer's responsibility, even if we're providing as much as we can for free. So certain things that I'll talk about in more detail in a couple of slides here are things like hiring an external auditor, performing some sort of specialized training that we don't offer, and as always, costs related to implementation. Those are always going to be the employer's responsibility. All right, in reality, where cost can sometimes not be a factor for some companies, or cost is free for us, the most valuable resource that we'll ask for on your end is just going to be some of your time. Because in order to be successful and efficient in building your program, we're going to ask that you spend about 2 to 4 hours per week, or have one person that you designate. That's going to be our main point of contact, and they'll spend 2 to 4 hours per week in order to meet with us and do some homework, work on some items after our meeting. I mean, our contribution to that is we'll also provide the same. We're willing to provide a contribution of about 2 to 4 hours per week on our end. On our side, we'll provide guidance, we'll provide advice. Our 2 to 4 hours, now, like I mentioned, in terms of one-on-one meetings, typically a meeting may only be about an hour to an hour and a half. But on our end, we'll spend time preparing before the meeting. We'll spend time attending your meetings, your committee meetings. We'll spend time reviewing documents all within that week. And on your end, with those 2 to 4 hours per week, you'll meet with us, and then you'll spend time actually working on the documents yourself, reviewing things and implementing items as well. Typically, what we do find is that 2 to 4 hours per week to meet with us is about what we actually require from a company.
Darshan, if SafetyDriven is funded through WorkSafe BC premiums, does this make them same as WorkSafe BC? How are you different than a safety officer?
Well, as far as that goes, we're not WorkSafe BC, nor are we a regulator. So where a regulator or WorkSafe or even ESDC may have the ability to write orders or to punish you or to fine you, we actually can't do any of that. We're just here to help companies with items that, for example, they may need to meet or may get them in trouble with the regulator. We'll help you deal with those items. This may include things like if you've already gotten an order, we'll help you figure out how best to comply with that. We may be able to help you identify areas where you're not in compliance with the regulation, or even assisting you in navigating regulatory processes such as your annual reporting requirements or with variances as well. All our advisors are actually going to be committed to maintaining confidentiality for anybody that we work with. So we won't reveal any trade or company specific information, nor do we discuss any company specific information between the clients that we're working with as well. Now, there are always going to be some items that we can't get involved in, that we can't help you out in. These items include dealing with claims management. It's a big one, where we can assist you in developing and reviewing corrective actions related to an incident. We can't actually manage claims for you. I've already touched on this once before, but our external core audits, those always have to be an external third party. That's not something that a safety-driven advisor can help you for. Hiring and paying for the auditor is always going to be the company's responsibility. And as I've already mentioned, we can't actually implement your program for you because safety-driven, we don't tell you what to do. We'll provide advice, we'll provide guidance, and we may make suggestions on what your policy should contain, what your procedures should be, as well as what should be implemented. But that is always going to be, it's always going to be the company's say as to what it is that they're implementing. It's going to be their responsibility, and it's the final call is up to them as to what goes in a policy or procedure. And lastly, just to reiterate, as I'd already mentioned, we don't exist to fine or punish you, right? We're not a regulator, to answer your question, probably in a long form. We're not the regulator, and we only want to work with you to help improve things for your company.
So what happens when SafetyDriven has finished building a safety program with the company?
Well, once you've gone through that development process and you've completed your health and safety program, as we've seen today, most companies are interested in core, and they do end up taking the next step to be core certified. Now, this step is optional, and it's totally up to the company whether they want to do so, because they'll still get a lot of benefits even without core. Very quickly, you'll have companies often do see a reduction in costly incidents. The health and safety standards in the workplace do often go up. And lastly, you'll have a full set of health and safety policies, a full health and safety program that will help you develop that's customized to your company's needs. But one thing to keep in mind, Prab, is that building a health and safety program with us doesn't automatically give you core. Just because we finished building that program, it doesn't mean you get core. You still need to go through that core process, which means you need to hire an external auditor, attend some sort of additional training if that's required. And we can't actually make any guarantees on how you'll perform on an audit. The program development process that we've developed and what we'll take you through, including all of the policies and procedures and implementation advice that we give you, it's been designed to meet or exceed core requirements. But again, because it's a third party, it's out of SafetyDriven's control, we can't ever guarantee that somebody's going to get core.
Darshan, I understand that a company is responsible for the external core audit, but is that something you can help me to prepare for?
Yep, as far as preparation goes, we can definitely help you with that aspect. One of the other services that we offer, which if you're going through our program development process, you'll actually receive for free, is the actual full program evaluation once we've finished developing your program. Now, this evaluation, it consists of a full review of all of your documentation and records, meaning the policies and procedures you've got in place, what kind of records you have as a result of that. We'll also be conducting things like worker interviews and site observations, looking at very similar things to what the core auditor may look at as well, because what we'll do is we'll provide an assessment of the strengths and weaknesses of your program. Based on this evaluation, SafetyDriven can definitely provide recommendations for areas to improve on prior to you hiring an external auditor or starting that external audit. And one thing to remember, probably, even if you haven't developed your program with us, we can still provide this service. Often at no cost, especially if you're in the general trucking and moving and storage industries, right? We'll still do the same evaluation if you have an existing program, and we'll give you a full report that details the strengths and weaknesses as well as recommendations for improvement. All right, so very quickly, let's just get a better idea. For those of us that did say we have a health and safety program, there is a poll up on your screen right now saying, have you ever reviewed your health and safety program? I know some companies do an annual review. Some companies may even choose to do this quarterly. Other companies I see have never done one, but they do have an existing and functional program. So yes, no, or obviously if we don't have a program, there's not going to be much there to review. So just go ahead and pick one of those options. Just wait for those results to come in. Shouldn't be very long. Perfect. All right. So it looks like 81% of us have been doing some sort of review of our health and safety program, which is great. Always love to see that. 13% said no, and about 6% of us said that we don't actually have a health and safety program. That's not a problem at all.
So Darshan, is course the last step a company can take? What if things change or I need help with something once I have developed a safety program?
Well, once you've finished building your safety program, at SafetyDriven, we really do believe in maintaining relationships beyond just that development process. And oftentimes we continue to work with clients in some capacity, even after they've built their program. And that doesn't matter whether or not you chose to get core. We'll still do things like performing regular evaluations to ensure that your program is still functioning well. We can assist you in reviewing your existing policies and procedures and working with you in order to, for example, meet new regulation that may come into effect. We often find ourselves helping companies in updating their program based on operational changes. So if your company has grown, maybe you go from large to small, you've gained more employees, you may even have picked up a new business operation and need help incorporating that into your existing program, or a second location or a third location in some cases. We can help you ensure that your program gets updated in order to meet whatever operational needs, and you'll still get that one-on-one support. You'll still get that, that dedicated advisor that's going to help you meet whatever annual requirements or regular requirements you have. Now, in addition to this, SafetyDriven, we do actually regularly host workshops and training sessions that you can attend even after your program's been developed. We do provide, for example, joint health and safety committee training if you've got new members, and we'll look at both provincial and federal regulation. right? We offer access to online courses that cover a variety of topics that can be used to add on to or supplement the knowledge that you or your workers have gained through the program development process. And these online courses can be taken anytime and anywhere. And lastly, one of our other things we can do is actually help you with take your safety program to the next step and work with your owner operators and help them achieve core based on your current program. So where your company has now gone and gotten core, your owner operators may not, we'll actually work with you in order to enroll your owner operators in the core program as well. And other things that we can offer are preparing for an upcoming maintenance audit, as I've mentioned. Lastly, one of our most popular services, and you'll see that third category on the screen there, is actually going to be our safety carnivals. Safety carnivals are on-site events. They're meant to be all about increasing worker safety awareness, and they can actually help make your company's next health and safety day or annual barbecue or anything of the sort like that a really memorable one, because we will come out to your site with interactive and engaging learning opportunities on a variety of safety topics.
You can also visit our website at SafetyDriven.ca and access many helpful safety resources. This includes videos, posters, templates, and forms, and many more resources. All these resources are available anytime for free, and there is no login required. We had shown you some samples earlier during the discussions about policies and forms that are needed for the safety program. Resources such as safety committee minutes, risk assessments, and rules of procedures documents can also be downloaded from our website for free. If anytime you have any questions when completing these documents, you can contact someone from our team, and we will be more than happy to help you.
All right. Well, one last thing in closing before we get into the Q&A. Just a reminder that Safety Driven, we really do believe in being a partner that helps you meet your health and safety goals. So from start to finish, we can help your organization by evaluating your program in order to figure out how best to help you, and we can explain what your next steps should be. Obviously, as we've talked about today, Safety Driven is more than capable of helping you build your safety program. But once your program is built, or if you get in touch with us and you've already got an existing safety program, we can take a look at it, help refine your safety program, and develop and help you meet your continual improvement goals as well.
Okay, so Darshan, let's go to some questions now. We will answer as many as we can. A quick reminder to use the QA feature to ask your questions. You can submit your questions anonymously if you would like. If you see your questions that you would like to be answered, click on the thumbs up to help it get seen. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so Darshan, the first question is from Robert. So he's a dispatch, working in a dispatch office with 46 owner operators. And he's asking about how much do I have to be responsible for the individual owner operators?
Well, Robert, as far as individual owner operators go, some companies do tend to think of them as subcontractors. Now, individual owner operators, they should have their own WorkSafe account. They should have a number of items that actually separate them a little bit from the company itself. It may be that based on what your specific operational needs are, that you've taken on some extra supervisory duties that may kind of blur the lines a little bit. But generally, an owner operator is a subcontractor. A lot of their stuff should be their responsibility. Where I've seen companies kind of get into trouble is when they have a lot of say over their owner operators. A regulator may step in and say, for example, if an owner operator gets an order or an issue, or there's an incident that occurs, a regulator may look at the prime company, at the company that's dispatching these owner operators, and tell them they have some sort of supervisory duty as a part of that as well. Now, of course, as far as individual owner operators and how to best handle that, what I would recommend is if you've got a health and safety program, what you should do is get in touch with us, and we'll actually help your owner operators develop their own health and safety program based on your existing one, right? Because the way that we see it is if you've got drivers out on the road, you've got company drivers that, for example, maybe core certified, you want your owner operators to be core certified as well, right? If we're sending out half of our workforce, and I believe you'd mentioned that you had a fair number of owner operators. What was the number? 46 owner operators. If you've got 46 owner operators out on the road, that may be a significant portion of your company that the general public sees as associated with their company, but they may not be working or meeting the same health and safety standards as well.
Okay, so next question is our anonymous question, and the attendee is asking about, what if I have two different companies operating as a one business? How safety driven will help?
Well, as far as two different companies operating in what business, that's actually quite common in our industry. What we'll do there, and what we always recommend, is to try to blend your health and safety program so you only have one health and safety program for both companies. The reason we recommend that is because it's a lot easier to just manage. I mean, we all know it's enough work to manage one program as is, but it's a lot simpler to just have workers follow one set of safety policies, one set of procedures. And then as your program gets built and gets put in place, in order to manage just one program, as opposed to trying to run two different programs for different sets of workers at the same time. So as much as we can, we will always try to blend your health and safety program that covers both of the different companies that are operating under one roof.
Sounds good. Okay, Darshit. So next question is from Sarita, and the attendees is asking about, my company has worked with Safety Driven in the past in developing our safety program. What type of follow-up do you do to ensure the safety program is effective and running smoothly? Do you conduct follow-up reviews?
Yeah, we definitely can help you with follow-up reviews. So that is very similar to like our safety evaluation service that I mentioned in this presentation. What we'll do is, I'm assuming you may or may not have gotten core. Let's assume that in this situation, you may not have gotten core. What we'll do is we'll essentially do a safety evaluation that looks at your full program, and we'll actually give you a full report that says, these are the strengths of your program. Here's the things that are working really, really well. And here's the weaknesses. Here's the things that we can improve that'll really help make your program whole again. We'll tell you of any gaps that we come across as well. What we'll do is we'll help you develop some sort of corrective action plan as a part of that, right? So we may sit down and say, okay, based on these opportunities for improvement, based on these areas that can be better, here's the steps that we would recommend that you take, or here's options, that from learning about your program, here's some options that we think may be helpful for your consideration as well.
Okay, so Darshan, next question is from the attendees. I believe their business is in up in north, and then he's asking about, how can you help the companies who are located in the north or outside of Vancouver area? And what about the joint health and safety training sessions? Like if the employees are not comfortable using computers, how safety driven help those kind of audience?
Okay, so a couple of things there. First of all, if you have operations that are up north that are, still within BC, but obviously not within the Lower Mainland area as we're located, that's not a problem at all. Safety driven, we believe in having face-to-face meetings as much as possible. I mean, we all know that Zoom is definitely a viable way to work because thanks to COVID, but we do recommend meeting face-to-face on a regular basis, whether that's once a month, once every couple of weeks, whatever that may be based on your specific location. We will always try to come out to your sites, to your location, and meet you at your offices whenever possible. Now, as far as training goes, that would be one of those situations where we would greatly prefer to deliver training in person. We know that not everybody has, for example, internet access up north, or at least steady internet access, right? Other people on your joint health and safety committee may not be comfortable using computers. In both of those situations, as much as possible, we will always try to work to come up with a solution to attend in person, to provide training in person, or if we're going through this program development process, in order to have some sort of meeting in person as well. Best thing I would recommend is just get in touch with us, and we'll see what we can set up that'll work for you.
Perfect. So Darshan, next question is from Sam. So do you work with truck maintenance facilities? What would be our CU be for that? And would there be a cost associated with developing a setup of existing program we have that we need some help with?
Yeah, so we definitely can work with a truck maintenance facility. I'm not sure what exactly your CU would be. What I would recommend is either you can contact WorkSafe and ask them what your CU is, or see if you have some paperwork laying around. But you can always get in touch with us, provide as much account information to Safety Driven as you can, and we'll determine all of that on our part. So we'll figure out what your CU would be, and based on your CU, there may or may not be a cost associated with that. If it is just truck maintenance, it's likely there may be, but as far as that specific cost goes, once we have your CU, we'll ask you over the phone or through email for a bit more company information. And then what we'll be able to do is we'll actually be able to tell you, A, if there is going to be a cost, and B, what that cost is going to be. And you can decide at that point whether or not you'd like to register or sign up with us as well. Perfect. I think that answered the question.
Okay, so next is our anonymous question again. How do I get my manager supervisors to get on board with all these? Where do I start from? And that's a really common question we get, Darshan.
Yeah, where we start from and how do we get managers on board is a big, big thing. For that reason, we always start off with our first module that we'll start off with is going to be our management, leadership, and commitment module. The reason we start there is because that actually requires, whether it's a senior manager, CEO, owner of the company, anybody of the sort, they'll be the very first signature and they'll be signing off on the overall health and safety policy statement for the entire company. Now, as far as individual supervisors go throughout the process, your advisor will work with you to come up with ways of how do we increase worker buy-in, how do we increase supervisor buy-in, anything of the sort like that. We'll work with you to try to make recommendations and develop strategies as best as we can. But like I mentioned, we always start with getting senior management buy-in because that goes a long way towards convincing other managers and other supervisors that, hey, this is something that the company is interested in. This is something that the owner, the CEO, the senior manager of the company is interested in making happen. And generally at that point, we usually get a bit more buy-in from the rest of the supervisor management team as well.
Okay, so next question is about how much reworking or refining would you say are typically involved after you get involved with the companies about, refining their existing policy and program? Is it a lot of money associated or a lot of cost associated with it?
Well, okay, so the first part of that, as far as how much needs to be refined, I mean, it really depends on your program. We've had some companies that had existing programs that decided that, you know what, we like your style, it's easy to understand, our workers understand it better, let's just rebuild right from start, go with that. We've had other companies where they, for example, may not even have an existing program. As far as how much we'll need to refine, anything of the sort like that, what we'll do there to help out that company is we'll actually perform an initial evaluation, which is kind of like the full safety evaluation. It's a slightly lighter version in some instances. But what we'll do is we'll actually take a look and see what it is that you have. And similar to our full program safety evaluation, we'll give you a report that basically says, here's the good areas, here's the areas that we need to improve. And at that point, you will have a better idea of what it is that you're looking at, how much work you're looking at. Now, as far as costs associated with that, as I've already mentioned a few times now, if you're in general trucking and you're in moving and storage, there likely will not be any sort of cost associated with that. We can provide that service for free. If you're not within those classification units, those two numbers that you saw on the screen, or you're not, if you know your operations aren't a part of general trucking or moving and storage, what I would recommend is get in touch with us because we'll see what we can figure out. We'll determine a cost for you and we'll let you know what that may cost ahead of time.
Okay. So next is Darshan. One of our attendees is asking about how they can get access to the templates and forms.
Oh, access to the templates and forms, all of that can be found on our website. We've got a ton of resources on our website, lots and lots of helpful information, various articles, posters, handouts, anything that may help you with their next safety meetings or anything of the sort like that. www.safetydriven.ca. There's a resources tab. On that resources tab, you can find any of these resources we've talked about today, and in addition to much more.
Okay, so next is again our anonymous question, Darshan. So the attendees is asking about if we want to set a joint health and safety committee which means one person from each department should be a part of it. Like, is this a part of the health and safety program? I mean.
So if they want to set up a health and safety committee, should one person from each department be a part of it? That is the ideal. Now, if you've got a company that has 300 departments, that may become unmanageable. So it really depends on your specific company operations. But one thing I will say is with joint health and safety committees, a really, really good committee will have representation from all areas of the companies. That includes drivers, dispatch, warehouse, maintenance staff, whatever it is that you may have. Now, it's always up to the company. And as far as how many people are on their committee, there are some minimums, but again, get in touch with us. We'll talk about more details there, but you always want your committee to have as good representation, as accurate representation of the workplace as possible, because that is what they're there for, right? If your committee is there to represent the workplace, you should have representation from the various departments as well.
Okay, and we'll just take one more question, and that is, okay, so one of our attendees is asking about, it seems like it would be a lot of work for the workforce of 3 people. Is this process is easier?
Yeah, for a workforce of just 3 people, if that's all your entire company is just 3 people, you would come in at what we're calling the owner operator size. So anywhere from 1 employee to or 1 worker to 3 workers. In that kind of 1 to 3 range, you're the owner operator size. The program that we would build with you is going to be a lot shorter. Your program development process is going to be a lot shorter. Often for owner operators, depending on your specific needs, we may look at it and say, it may be beneficial because you're right on that cusp to build a small employer program instead. But like I said, once we get a better idea of your specific operations and what your company actually looks like, we'll tell you how long we think it'll take. But definitely, if your workforce is only 3 people, a lot of what I talked about today is catered towards specifically large employers. But we know that owner operators are a big part of our industry, and we try to make this as easy and as accessible. So you will absolutely have a lighter program than a large employer will, for sure.
Okay, I'm so sorry to cut this short. There were so many great questions, but time is running out, and I want to be respectful of our audience time and wrap up on time today.
All right, and lastly, a big thank you to all of you for attending. A thank you to our team behind the scenes that made sure this happened, and thank you all for attending. Hope you all have a very nice day.